Frank Beard, the man with no beard. I think that it probably rivals some marriages. We're constantly asked what might be the secret behind the scenes. The answer is quite simple.
On August 17, 2026, Billy Gibbons got to call every bandmate dreads. Frank Beard, the man who had kept time behind ZZ Top's drum kit for 56 years, was gone. He died in hospice care at his ranch in Richmond, Texas, surrounded by family at 77 years old. For the first time since three young musicians jammed together in a Houston living room back in 1969, Billy Gibbons was the only original member left standing. And when he finally spoke, what he said left fans stunned. "Stay with me, because this one is heavier than it looks." Frank Beard's decline had actually been playing out quietly for months. He stepped away from ZZ Top's ongoing tour earlier in the year, handing his drum stool to a fill-in player while he dealt with health problems the band never explained in detail. He returned for a stretch. Then the group had to cancel a high-profile show as his condition worsened. Then came Monday, August 17th. No official cause of death was ever released, and the silence around it only made the grief heavier for fans who had watched their hero fade without ever being told why. Word spread fast. ZZ Top canceled two upcoming shows in Salt Lake City and Colorado Springs to give the band and crew room to process what had happened. Musicians from across rock and roll posted their own tributes within hours, and reporters everywhere pointed out the strange little irony that a band famous for its beards had just lost a one member who never grew one. But the real question fans wanted answered was simple. What would Billy Gibbons say? And would ZZ Top even keep going? Gibbons answered almost immediately, and he did it the way Frank Beard himself would have, plainly, without drama. He said that he and bassist Elwood Francis had lost a great friend and collaborator, and that the world had lost one of the most naturally innovative drummers it had ever known. Then he added the line fans were really waiting for, that the band Beard had spent 6 decades building was going to keep on keeping on, exactly as Beard had wished. That single sentence answered the biggest question almost instantly. ZZ Top was not stopping. To understand why that answer landed the way it did, you have to understand who Frank Beard actually was. Born in the small town of Frankston, Texas, and raised in Irving, Beard grew up on blues records and border radio long before ZZ Top existed. He was already grinding through the Texas club circuit in bands with names like the Cellar Dwellers and the Warlocks when in late 1969, Billy Gibbons needed a rhythm section. Beard suggested his old friend Dusty Hill on bass. The three of them jammed for hours at Gibbons' house, and they never really stopped. ZZ Top released its first album in 1971 and went on to record 15 studio albums, with Beard behind the kit on every single one, right through 2012's La Futura. His playing had a specific signature, a hard shuffling feel that sat just slightly behind the beat, and musicians who worked with him often said that lazy, loping pocket was the secret ingredient that let Gibbons' guitar and Hill's bass lock into that unmistakable ZZ Top groove. Songs like Tush Legs and Sharp Dressed Man do not work without it. Offstage, Beard fought battles the public rarely saw. In the band's 2019 documentary, he spoke candidly about a heroin and cocaine addiction that consumed much of his money in the 1970s, admitting he once burned through a huge payday on drugs and eventually sold his own drum kit to keep the habit going. He got sober during the band's hiatus in the early 80s and came back changed, helping drive ZZ Top's improbable reinvention as an MTV-era hit machine. He married Debbie Meredith in 1982. The couple had twin sons, and by every account from people who worked with him, he became the most disciplined member of the trio, arriving early and treating the drums like precision machinery rather than a stage prop. That is the man Billy Gibbons was honoring. And rather than pulling back from the road, Gibbons chose to treat the stage itself as a tribute. Only days after Beard's death, ZZ Top walked back out in Austin, Texas, resuming their tour instead of pausing it. Gibbons mentioned the loss just once, briefly, telling the crowd they were there to celebrate, then sharing a small, warm memory about a conversation he'd had with Beard near the end. The set that followed ran to the band's classics, and by every account it felt less like a band limping through an obligation, and more like exactly what Gibbons had promised, a celebration rather than a funeral. So what happens to ZZ Top now that Gibbons is truly the last man from that original trio? The touring continues, with Elwood Francis on bass and a fill-in drummer holding down the rhythm section. The same way the band adapted once before when Dusty Hill passed away in 2021 and Francis, his own longtime guitar tech, stepped in at Hill's request. That earlier loss set the template for how the band is handling this one, treating change not as betrayal but as respect for a bandmate's clearly stated wishes. There is something worth sitting with in how Gibbons chose to handle all of this. He did not treat Frank Beard's death as an ending to mourn indefinitely, and he never pretended the loss was small either. He simply kept doing the thing Beard would have wanted most, playing the songs and keeping the tour moving, trusting that the music itself was always going to be the real tribute. For 56 years, the quietest member of ZZ Top kept perfect time behind two of rock's most flamboyant frontmen. Now that his seat is empty, Billy Gibbons made sure the world knew exactly how much that quiet contribution had actually been worth. Thanks for watching. If this one hit you the way it hit me, drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe for more stories like this.